Okay, off we go. This is August 2026. I wanted to give some feedback about the two assignment assessment tasks in the Learning Design Graduate Certificate subject, which is called Design, which is also a microcredential. Now, this might be a little bit lengthy. I might go for about 20 minutes, maybe. So you're under no obligation to watch. It's more just I like to consolidate because the course is 100% online. This is the mechanism that I have to feed back to my learners just to kind of complete the loop. So in our cohort, there were 27 learners across the graduate certificate and the microcredential. And there was a small percentage that were very enthusiastic. In fact, week after week after week, they were contributing to the discussions. There were other kind of the Padlets, other activities that we have throughout Canvas, and then they were turning up. So we didn't have large numbers in the live sessions, but the people that did turn up were participated, which is really beneficial, I believe, for them and more enjoyable for me. But we do set this up using the high flex model, so there's no obligation to attend the live sessions. You can watch the recording. And so all of that's revealed. I guess I'm mentioning it now because it's revealed when I mark or grade the assessments. There are names of people that I haven't interacted with. I have every confidence that they have, participated. But this is the nature of online learning. So I want to talk about your assessment tasks. Now, in assessment 1, this is group feedback, so it's deliberately de-identified and it's made very general so that it's not, so it's appropriate for sharing further. So I'm just going to look at the rubric, which I haven't got on my screen, but you had to develop a proposal. So you got marks for clarity of alignment of learning outcomes to the requirements of the scenario. Almost all people did a really good job with that, with the developing learning outcomes. A really typical stumbling point was the two types of things. One was trying to double up, triple up, quadruple up. So you've got one learning outcome, but you've got it's too complex. So I just encourage those people to kind of unpack or further refine the learning outcomes because they're not achievable if you put them into a real situation like a program, course, or piece of learning, a workshop, whatever you've got. If your learning outcomes are too complex, they're not achievable, or they're hard to measure, or they're frustrating for the learner. They're hard to design for. And when I say they're too complex, there's doubling and tripling up. All I mean is you start off with a verb. It might be like state something or describe something, but then there's a comma. It goes into more detail, and there's more verbs, and then there's more verbs. So that was one stumbling point. It's not a deal breaker, but that was just something where it could be further improved. Another stumbling point was superficially, on a surface level, if you're in a job role, your actions within the job are very similar to the actions you might perform in an assessment task in a piece of training. Sometimes they're identical, but generally there's a difference. So some people just described what the person would be doing in their job role. So it's a bit unfair, I think, for learners in a training situation to have their learning outcome described as what they are going to be doing on the job, because there's other factors at play. And I'm saying it in that way because as learning designers, we need to know the difference, because there is a difference, but they were minimal. Then we needed to have you describe the needs of the learner, who they were. Most people did a really good job of that. And and also how you went about your finding out. We didn't ask you to do a survey, but you needed to describe how you would find out information about your learners. That was really well done. Then you had to justify, or you had to propose some strategies, and I like the fact that almost everyone proposed a range of different strategies. It might be classroom instruction, it might be a online session, or a one-to-one feedback or something like that. And most of them were aligned to, they were customised to a group of learners in a context. They weren't generic, which is really good. Now, the main thrust of our assignment 1 is coming up with some academic literature references, in-text citations to justify your decisions. So they were done really well. In fact, because I've been running this class or the subject for several years, I've noticed that these were even of a higher quality than I remember. I'm not able to sort of explain that kind of increase in quality. I think it's a good thing, but I guess it's more complex. I might have to have a little think, reflect myself with some colleagues. And the stumbling point for those that didn't could be improve their submission, they didn't link it strongly enough to the academic literature. They might have mentioned an academic paper, but they didn't have the citation, or they didn't bother to even link it to a piece of literature, like what I mean is a model, framework, those sort of things. So, but generally the assignment 1 was of high quality. Now I do want to focus on assignment 2. So that is a reflection, which is only 500 words. And I know that we encouraged everyone in our meet and greet, do not use AI for this task. And I'm happy that was seemed to be the case. So we wanted to know, I've got the rubric in front of me, a reflection on your initial perspectives and then how they have changed, and your new understandings, like what's the new knowledge, your new skills, what do you know now after 6 weeks, and linking those to some academic referencing. So what I have done is I've gone through and I've picked out little bits and pieces from most of these submissions. I won't overshare, but I just felt that it was of benefit, especially in this sort of video kind of format. So I've got them on a document here. Someone said that initially, to me, learning design was initially about putting together information into slides, PowerPoint slides, or a manual, and they assumed that if the staff was supplied with the correct information, their behaviour would naturally change. So that was something that they had to rethink, which is good. Another insight from a different learner, that instructional design should match the structure of the task, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. So I think in educational research that's really significant. Sometimes there's maybe an assumption, like a scientific assumption. You've got a method and you just roll it out to every learner, young and old, and it'll work. But that's not often the case. Or, even I know that's a bold claim, that's not often the case, but we like to encourage that it's the whole design process. We're matching the structure of the tasks with the learner's needs. So we pick the different methods as required. We don't just get an off-the-shelf solution and then roll it out and assume that it's going to be suitable for everyone. So that I liked that insight. Hopefully this won't take forever. I've got a lot of these. Where are we? This other learner liked the course itself, the active participation, as in the discussions, the class feedback, the Padlets, and they felt that it enhanced their learning experience. And they linked that to the benefits of the constructivist approach to design, active learning, authentic activities. This person chose to investigate professional learning because of it was a real world challenge that they were experiencing. So that enabled them, we've designed the course this way, that enabled them to go further into one of the methodologies, human performance technology, and they scrutinised their performance gap. So they were reflecting upon the real world challenge and how they managed to solve at least some of it or get some thinking around it. Another high praise for constructivism. That resonated strongly with this learner about authentic contexts, personal and shared experiences. They even had a little link in text citation to Vygotsky, 1978. Hang on a minute. And again, they've got big plans to incorporate these approaches into their this sort of idea of social learning and problem solving into their own training in their workplace. Another person says, one of the most important shifts in my thinking was determining whether the performance gap is because of knowledge and skills, or is it something else? Like, as in, don't just rush in to do the training. And I have had a profound example from my own working experience earlier this year, where training was part of a solution, but it wasn't a lack of knowledge and skills only. There were other elements of the business workflow and context that needed to be tweaked in order to get the behaviour and get things moving. It wasn't just all on lack of training. So that's a profound insight. And I know we emphasised that in weeks 1 and 2. So that was good. That was a reflection item that came up. People tend to love UDL. Universal Design for Learning popped up several times. This person initially, they struggled to see how UDL could be applied in their corporate learning environment, and how it's tricky to know how you're meant to know the needs of every single learner. However, after they had completed the course, done the readings, done the activities, they now have a greater appreciation of universal design for learning, inclusive design. In other words, it doesn't require knowing every learner personally. Instead, it involves proactively providing multiple ways for learning. I'm just reading it out. Or for learners to access information and engage with the learning, e.g. face-to-face delivery combined with online, combined with maybe printed materials, combined with lots of illustrations. We don't know, but it's more the kind of the practical implementation maybe of UDL. So I liked that one. This reflection from another learner, at times they were worried they were not following the design process correctly, and then they recognised these are frameworks, they're guides, they're not blueprints set in stone that you follow meticulously. You just tap into them as needed, and they became more comfortable moving between frameworks depending on the problem they were trying to solve. So that's really great insight for me to read that about how this learner has changed, what insights they have gained. And then they quote a reference as well. Where are we? Hang on. Okay, this person, and then they've quoted some academic literature. They
this idea of arriving at a solution before framing the underlying problem. So that was a huge realization. The performance gap, and maybe there's another gap, like the lack of time might be a gap. And there may be a genuine knowledge gap. Maybe they're unfamiliar with something, but in the past they'd just rushed in as one undifferentiated problem. Whereas now, after they've gone through the 6 weeks, they now realise it's actually you can separate the performance gap or a knowledge gap from maybe a systemic gap or other gaps. Lack of time, lack of equipment, lack of clear instruction in a workplace, who knows. Now, I liked this one a lot. I started the course with blank pages, knowing almost nothing about the theories underpinning learning design. So all of them, they were new and interesting. This learner was only considering the visual aspects and not maybe the theoretical foundations. This other learner liked blended learning because it's the staff in their department are they want courses in person but also online, hybrid approaches. It's kind of tricky, and so they tapped into BIGS 2001. This idea of using the correct model, building a course with quality that's fit for purpose, those sort of, like a fluidity maybe. So at the start of the subject, different person again, different learner, I like this one a lot. They regarded instructional theories as academic explanations rather than practical tools. But now they realise that they're practical. They were tending to move quickly from identifying the problem to coming up with the training response. And so even those few sentences, there's a lot packed into that. So again, these are little excerpts from your reflection, which is only 500 words, but they're noteworthy because there's collectively, there's a lot of learning. It's evidence of learning occurring, and it's customized to your particular context. All of your submissions were quite different because you're addressing the needs of different cohorts, different learners. So I'm near the end, I think. This person became more aware of their assumptions that were underlying their approach to design problems. And as the course progressed, this is to do with ineffective training. It's basically their new respect for the performance gap and having a kind of further analysis before selecting an appropriate intervention, which is informed by the academic literature. So just pausing, that came up quite a few times, this idea of not rushing in, not skipping a step. One of the things about ADDIE, because I had participated in a employment situation within the vocational sector, there was a general assumption that ADDIE was it, full stop. And that pops up a couple of times in the reflections. So it was great that there's the whole universe of learning theories. You don't have to memorise all of them, but a lot of them are more sophisticated than ADDIE, which when you look at it, ADDIE's really a workflow. It's a framework and it could be used for anything. It doesn't need to be used for learning design. It could be just used for any workplace doing anything. But it is valuable, so it was good to have that in mind with all these other kind of options and models, frameworks, approaches. This person is a primary school teacher, and they just felt they were a learning designer by chance. So they've done designing of curricula, rubrics, learning syllabuses and activities. However, they have a newfound respect because they've realised that learning design is actually different enough. There's a lot of skills that are the same, but it's different enough, and it was new territory for them. So that was good to hear. I've got a few more. Okay, this learner was impressive because they used a framework for their reflection, DIEP1 framework. I actually looked that up, and it looked pretty good in terms of building a structure around how does one reflect rather than random thoughts. It structures it out. I won't go into the detail, but I was impressed by that, and the idea of improving their teaching in the future. This one was interesting. It was about adult education and organisational training. Does not need to focus on the learner, but the organisation's resources, systems, and politics to be effective. It's quite loaded, that concept, but I guess this is an authentic snapshot of where people are starting from and what's going on, how they perceive training, how they perceive the role of learning, how they perceive the role of learning design. It can be informed by so many different assumptions. So that was a sparkly little insight. Another high praise for universal design for learning and learner choice, flexibility, ways that are learning that's meaningful for the individual learner and designing it for that. Someone else says, I used to think that if trainers got clear instructions, they'd be confident using it. So they realised that it's not just about the learning management system or the instructions. There's more going on. It's about what are the tools, how do they work, how can they be used, that sort of thing. Another high praise for new appreciation for blended learning. And then that's linked to the academic literature. More than just their future plans. They've just got future plans. There's a degree of enthusiasm with all of these reflections, or most of them, because there's plans to use the new knowledge and insights and skills for future projects. High praise for the high flex model. And this is a nice little bit of feedback. I'd created these little videos for some of the learners. They'd emailed me, what do I do for my assignment, or I'm confused or whatever. So I just answered 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and I posted that on one of the forums in Canvas. So this learner found that approach, Mark's approach of creating a video to answer a question, was a great use of technology and helpful. And this person, there'd been a bit of time in between their university studies, so I'm glad to hear that was of use. Okay, these are the final two. I've come to the end. I think I must be up to about 20 minutes now. This person started out thinking or assuming that instructional designers were just to make a course that was engaging. But now they have a new appreciation. It's a structured process, and it's often guided by evidence and the learner's needs. It's more sophisticated than they first thought. This final insight, they've already begun integrating the learnings from this course into their professional practice. They're distinguishing between the theories and models and frameworks and strategies, and they've set up a little visual display in their workplace so they can tap into them easily, because there's a lot of them, and we don't need to know all of them. That's why in weeks 1 and 2 and 3, I encouraged you to pick out your favourites, or keep an eye out for the ones that resonate, because they're the ones that are likely to be more useful to you. And they focused on the relationships between the theories, models, frameworks, strategies. So it becomes this amazing web that can be quite complex. But again, we don't need to know every little detail or use every little detail. But in effective learning design approaches, you do tap into a wide range of kind of approaches, and you see the links between them. Anyway, I think I might leave it there. So I have enjoyed, even though the numbers were down in the live session, but I have enjoyed facilitating this cohort of the design subject for UTS. So hopefully, for those that have stuck with this video to the end, hopefully this gives you at least an insight as to what other people in the group are thinking. Sometimes if I'm teaching face-to-face, I might have a kind of round circle, kind of hear from everyone. So this is almost like a mediated version of that. So best wishes, as I said in lots of the feedback I gave within your assessments within Canvas, best wishes for your learning design plans, and I may pop into you or see you at a professional development session or a LinkedIn post or something like that. So I will leave it there. Thank you.